Let's get right into it. Today, we're unpacking 1 Samuel, chapter 25. And look, we're not just dusting off some dry, ancient history here. No, what we have on our hands is a high-stakes, ticking clock thriller of crisis management. It is literally a masterclass in leadership, the danger of unchecked pride, and the sheer, world-shifting power of diplomacy when absolutely everything is on the line.
I mean, think about it. How did one woman's quick thinking stop 400 armed men from shedding innocent blood? That is the incredible life-or-death scenario we're breaking down today. The immense stakes of this entire narrative hinge on just a matter of minutes, a severely bruised ego, and a desperate all-out race to prevent a total bloodbath. Let's see exactly how this whole thing unfolds.
Part 1, the setup and the spark.
Okay, let's dive into this setup. First, we've got David. The text tells us David and his men are camped out in the wilderness of Paran, and they're essentially acting as this unpaid security force, right? A protective wall day and night for the local shepherds. Since it's feasting time, David sends 10 attendants over with a really polite, totally reasonable request for just whatever basic provisions can be spared. Simple enough. Well, contrast him with Nabal. The text paints a very specific, unflattering picture of this guy. He operates out of Carmel, he's immensely wealthy, we're talking 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats. It's shearing time, which means a massive celebration and a huge feast. But here is the kicker. The text explicitly describes Nabal as difficult and an evildoer.
So, David's men arrive, deliver their peaceful greeting, ask for a small share of the feast, and this is Nabal's response. He literally sneers, "Who is David and who is the son of Jesse? These days the rebellious servants have increased, each against his master." Ouch. He doesn't just say no, he actively goes out of his way to insult David, calling him a runaway servant, a nobody. He's basically saying, why on earth should I take my bread, my water, my meat that I prepared for my shears, and hand it over to men from who knows where? This harsh, sneering disrespect, that is exactly the spark that lights the match of this entire conflict.
Part 2, de-escalation. Things go from a slow simmer to an absolute boil. Fast.
The attendants turn right around and report Nabal's exact words back to David. And David? He doesn't pause. He doesn't call a council or sleep on it. His reaction is explosive and immediate. Each man gird his sword. He chooses violence without a single second thought. Every man straps on a weapon, and David himself girds his sword. That volatile pride of a future king has been triggered, and make no mistake, he is out for blood.
I want you to really wrap your head around the terrifying scale of the threat here. 400. That's the number of armed men abandoning their post in the wilderness to march straight toward Nabal's household. David leaves 200 guys behind with the gear, but he takes 400 hardened warriors with one singular, terrifying goal in mind: an absolute massacre of Nabal and every single male in his household.
Part 3. Abigail's race against time.
As this makeshift army mobilizes, a young servant rushes over to Abigail, Nabal's wife, and delivers a desperate warning about Nabal's insults and the absolute doom heading their way. Abigail realizes instantly that she has minutes to avert a catastrophe. So without saying a word to her husband, she swings into action. And this brilliantly illustrates her extreme logistical competence under pressure. She hurriedly grabs 200 breads, 2 containers of wine, 5 cooked sheep, 5 siyas of toasted grain, 100 raisin clusters, and 200 cakes of pressed figs. She loads all this onto donkeys and sends her attendants on ahead. She is literally packing the logistics of peace in a matter of moments. I mean, that is wild to think about.
The cinematic tension in this moment is just phenomenal. Imagine it. Abigail is riding her donkey, clandestinely racing down one side of the mountain. At the exact same time, David and his 400 furious men are descending the opposite mountain, heading straight for her. As they ride, David is actually muttering a dark oath, swearing to God that he won't leave a single dog alive by morning because Nabal repaid his kindness with pure evil. They are literally seconds away from a massive collision.
Part 4. A masterclass in diplomacy. When Abigail finally meets David, she doesn't hesitate for a second. She dismounts, falls right at his feet, and incredibly, she takes the blame entirely upon herself. She tells David to just ignore Nabal, basically saying, look, the man is exactly what his name implies, a revulsion, a fool. Now, what's really interesting here is her brilliant strategy. She doesn't just beg for her life, she de-escalates the entire situation by appealing to David's future legacy. She reminds him that God is actively preventing him from shedding blood today. She points out that God is going to appoint David as leader over Israel, and when that day finally comes, well, a hot-headed massacre like this, it would be a massive stumbling block, a moral hindrance. She tells him, do not avenge yourself with your own hand. She is expertly saving David from his own worst instincts.
And it works. Her masterful words completely shatter his rage. David looks right at her and says, "Blessed is Hashem, God of Israel, who sent you this day to meet me, and blessed is your advice, and blessed are you, who have restrained me from coming to bloodshed and avenging myself by my own hand." So, the absolute crucial takeaway here is that her intellect and her courage didn't just save her household. She literally saved David's moral authority. He accepts her massive peace offering, tells her to go up in peace, and actually turns his 400 men around.
Part 5. Nabal's Fall, David's Rise.
Let's move to the timeline here and see how this bizarre aftermath builds. Abigail gets back home that night to find Nabal completely, blissfully oblivious. He is throwing a feast for a king, he's in high spirits, and he is incredibly drunk. So, exercising perfect timing, she tells him absolutely nothing until the morning light. But when morning comes and Nabal is finally sober, she tells him the whole story, exactly how close he and everything he owned came to being utterly slaughtered. The text says the sheer shock was so profound that his heart, quote, died within him and he became like a stone, just completely stunned. 10 days later, Hashem strikes Nabal and he dies. It's wild. His own hubris and the sheer terror of that near miss are what ultimately destroy him.
Word gets back to David out in the wilderness that Nabal has died, and he immediately recognizes that God took up his cause and returned Nabal's evil right back onto his own head. But David also recognizes something else, the immense wisdom, the presence of mind, and the tremendous value of Abigail. So he sends agents straight to Carmel with a proposal asking to take her as his wife. She graciously accepts, brings her 5 maids, and follows David's messengers, cementing a seriously powerful new alliance.
So, we wrap up today's explainer with this thought, and it's a big one. True power isn't in drawing the sword, but in having the wisdom to keep it sheathed. David had 400 swords ready to draw, right? But it was Abigail's incredibly sharp intellect, her swift logistical maneuvering, and her profound diplomatic framing that held off an entire army. It really leaves us asking ourselves in our own lives, when our pride takes a hit, do we immediately reach for our swords, or do we have the foresight to look out for the stumbling blocks ahead? Thank you so much for exploring this incredible text with me today. Keep learning, keep reflecting, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.